Welcome, boys and girls, to this fluff video of Kings of War. This is what I call the too long didn't read version of the fluff of Mantica and the background story, lore, background, whatever you call it, of Pannithor. If you want to know what the Kings of War lore is about, but you're just too lazy to read it, this is the place for you. Of course, warning, spoilers ahead. So if you like to read the fluff in all its glory, you probably don't want to watch this video. But if you just want to see what it's all about, to see whether you're interested, definitely give this a watch. And I'm not going to do this alone. So I have two guests with me today. And first off, we have the Thane of the Northern Alliance, Lord of the Murder Basement, all-around fluff bunny and awesome dude, Felix Castro.
Hello, hello, hello.
And next up, we have Man of Mystery, and he's actually the brains behind the Kings of War RPG, and he's Mark Langworthy.
Good evening.
Well, Mark, I think some of the viewers would like to know more about you. So tell us more about how you got to know Kings of War and how you happen to be writing the Kings of War RPG right now.
So I've always had an interest in fantasy games and role-playing games. And a few years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to Kings of War as a wargaming system. I just got into writing role-playing games myself at the time, and I managed to track Ronnie Renton down at a few conventions and kept kind of asking if we were able to make a role-playing game for Kings of War. In the meantime, I actually made my way onto the Vanguard committee, rules committee, just prior to it and just after it coming out. So kind of helped polish up Vanguard into what it is now, and helped with the Ice on Iron supplement also. Awesome. And then just kind of really became steeped in everything Kings of War along the way. And eventually Ronnie caved.
And I'm pretty sure you have access to all of the Kings of War materials while you're writing the RPG, so you'll be a great addition to this video right here. So we're going to dive into it. Firstly, if you look at this picture on the left, it's actually in the halls of Terrania Aldar. It's a city of the Elves, and there's this map on the table, and the quill that keeps drawing the map by itself is like Google Maps, and it can show you the map at different points of history as well. It will redraw itself. First up, we're going to talk about how it all started. This is the Primo Janitors. These are the ancient gods of Pannithor. And firstly, we have Banek, which is the god of life, Shobik, which is the god of death, Ompek, which is the god of light, Lonok, the god of darkness, Treneka, god of water, Korgan, the god of air, and Dianek or Dianek, the god of earth. The first six, they're kind of paired with each other. So life and death, they are like intrinsically linked, and light and darkness, they are linked as well. They're forever fighting, right? And it is said that the Ompek is the bringer of the sun, and Lonong is the bringer of the moon. Right? They're not the sun and moon themselves, but they're the bringers. Air and water, they play with each other all the time. While Dianek she's pretty solitary. She lives under the ground and nobody really cares about her. So she's very, very lonely. This Primo Janitors, it ties into the origin of the noble races, which are the Elves, humans, and Dwarves respectively. Banek is the god of life, and he likes to create races, right? He likes to create races, and then Shobik will come to take them away when it's time for them to die. Vanek, eventually he created the race of Elves, and he was very proud of his creations because they are like the perfect creatures. And because of that, he hid the Elves from Shobik because he didn't want Shobik to take them away. But eventually Shobik found out about the Elves, and he says like, what gives, man? So to appease Shobik, Banek created humans, which have shorter lifespan, so that Shobik can keep taking them away. So that is what Banek did to appease Shobik. So the human race was created. Because humans, they have a relatively short lifespan, so they are constantly very busy and wanting to achieve stuff because they have a relatively short lifespan compared to the other races. And how the Dwarves were created. The Dwarves were created, this is based on their folk tales, that they are actually created by Dianek, the god of the earth. She sees all the races being created by Banek, and she felt very lonely, and she started crying, and her tears dripped onto some stone forms, and it turned into dwarves. So the dwarves are actually the creation of Dianek to keep her company.
You kind of hit it, that Banek creates the, basically on paper, immortal elves, and Shobik gets the, like you mentioned, the very mortal and short-lived humans. So
the next part, the Time of Light. Mark, you want to take this part?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned the elves are, on paper basically immortal. They had millennia really to kind of practice the arcane arts and master lots of ancient mystical forces. They started to explore different planes and dimensions, and one of their order opened a dimension or a door to another realm, which allowed the Celestians to come through. The Celestians were kind of accepted as new godlike beings amongst the noble races, and by then the old gods of that you'd mentioned previously, the Primo Janitors, had almost faded into the background. The Celestians as the new gods in amongst the noble races,
and I think there were thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands of them, all chiefly led by Miscator, his protege, who comes to his own shortly is Oscan. Or Oscan's kind of always looking for Miscator's favour, which is where kind of future calamity comes from that we'll get to in a minute. But they all kind of come through, take up amongst the noble races, start teaching them new things. The noble races are really appreciative of it.
So the Oscan is like the rebellious teenage son of Miscator, right?
Yeah, he's not his direct son, but he's always looking for Miscator's favour, and Miscator's kind of almost oblivious to it, really, and that just kind of sours and festers with Oscan, really, and leads into the next stage, really.
Right. So with the arrival of the Celestians, the old gods fade into the background. Then we have the story of the Phenolium Mirror.
Oscan's kind of always looking for a way to impress. And what I really love about the background is that there are different spins in it. The different races have different spins and different ways of recording these things. Which one is kind of the true background to it is left open to the reader, really. So you have Kalasor here, who's on the screen. Is the greatest elf that ever lived at the time, really. He's the greatest of their heroes, and he falls madly in love with a human lady called Ellenthora. But she kind of continually spurns him, so he, no matter what he tries, and even he's kind of, the greatest elven hero, she just continues to spurn him.
Yeah, she doesn't want to be married to an elf because the elf will far outlive her, and she doesn't want that kind of life, right?
Yeah, even the fact that her children outlive her, half elves take on more of their elven aspect than they do humans, so even her children will outlive her eventually.
She can't get his inheritance.
So he goes into kind of a really deep depression and wanders off on his own, leaves the elven nation for a time. And in that depression, Oscan finds him and convinces him that he has a way for Kalasor to win Ellenthor's hand. So he teaches him the crafting of the Phenolium Mirror, which is kind of like the greatest artifact of its age, really.
It's a powerful artifact that supposedly could help you glimpse into the future. That's what Oscan says. Whether that's the true purpose of it, we'll never know.
Right.
No, and he's kind of almost kind of murmurs that if Ellenthor does look into it, make sure she stops by the time she sees a golden bird. But it's like an afterthought that he mentioned it to Kalasor. And part of the craft in the Phenolium Mirror is stealing the power of something called the Star of Heaven. Again, I think due to the millennia that's passed, we don't quite know what that is. And
we just know it's very linked to the power of the Celestians.
Yeah, Kalasor forges the mirror, and he still struggles after all of this to get Ellenthor to meet with him. But she eventually does. And in viewing the mirror, she kind of sees that she can grow to love Kalasor, and they both kind of drift towards each other as the viewing is happening. Kalasor gets swept up in it himself and forgets the warning about the golden bird, which does appear in the vision. And as the golden bird appears...
He missed that part while it's playing on TV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He missed the Starbucks coffee. As that happens, the vision kind of shifts into the darker times where Ellenthor dies. Kalasor goes into a mad grief and even ends up finding one of their sons. Which turns Ellenthor from the thoughts of kind of love that was springing up for Kalasor. She smashes the mirror, which in effect is kind of the death knell for the Celestians in a way, because with the smashing of the mirror, they're split into two halves. They're kind of shining in one halves and they're wicked in one halves.
Even before this, actually, most of them died from the shattering of the mirror.
Yeah, just the shockwave of the mirror shattering, yeah.
Because there were thousands of Celestians, and right now, from the Fluff, there's only 27 wicked ones left. So each of the surviving Celestian, they're split into two. They're split into the good half and evil half, basically. The shining ones being the good half of themselves, embodies all their positive attributes, while the wicked ones embodies the bad parts, the bad traits of themselves. And it's recorded that that's 27 wicked ones, so I'm assuming there's at least 27 shining ones, but I think some of them might have been killed already. So we just know that there's only a handful of Celestians left from this.
So it's kind of intimated that Oscan kind of planned this because he was really struggling with the fact that he wanted to be his own being. So to do that, he wanted to kind of shed, I guess, more human aspects of himself, or the more empathetic aspects of himself, so he could be a bit more free. So as soon as the mirror shatters, he stood by. Elenathora takes her own life, and he uses the shard.
Yeah, Elenathora stabbed herself with a shard of the mirror.
So Oscan grabs that shard, or his wicked one half grabs that shard and straight away murders his own shining one half. So he's free to kind of be the being that he wanted to be, really. That event, he starts to stalk other shining ones and kill them off, and that leads into the next stage.
Yeah. So he pretended to be confused by the events of the split, confided with other shining ones, and actually killed them off. And then he rounded off the wicked ones to work for him, basically. So he's actually the leader of the wicked ones. So the 27 wicked ones that remain, the head is Oscan. So then we lead to the events of the God War.
Yeah, so this probably is exclusive content, actually. We've got the timeline appearing in the RPG soon. And the God War stretches across, nearly 200 years, just shy of. So it's not a short event by any means. So yeah, the shining ones and the wicked ones face off. Again, Miskator has a hand. He has a son, Domivar, who's the guy on the left of the screen for myself. He's in effect half Celestial or half Shining one, really. And the war drags on. The wicked ones get to all sorts of things. Like Dark Chiron creates the Orcs, and then in the wake creates the Goblins. He actually captures his Shining one half to torture him, Brave Chiron, but Brave Chiron managed to escape, and he takes what eventually becomes the Trident realms with him, the creatures that could. Dark Chiron's been creating all sorts of things in his.
Right, so I think it was Garkan the Black as well, and Dark Chiron was experimenting with
creating.
Yes. Garkan the Black was the one that created the Orcs, so they wanted to create minions of warlike creatures to do their bidding. So that's how they created the Orcs. In the experimentation, the Herd and the Trident realm creatures were created and abandoned, basically. And so the Shining One, Brave Chiron, actually took them, and then they sort of forged their own destiny after that.
Right? Yeah, my mistake. Sorry, it's Garkan, and Dark Chiron has some influence here as well. And eventually the God War kind of culminates in this epic battle we can see here between.
This is Oscan over here. He's
Domivar,
huge compared to Domivar.
So the kind of mortal forces are fighting underneath, and Oscan and Domivar take to the sky to fight the last epic battle. So you can see Oscan there wielding Kalasor's Sorrow, which is crafted from the shard of the mirror. Yeah,
he has a shard of the mirror that stabbed Elenathora, and this forged into this axe called Kalasor's Sorrow.
And then Domivar's wielding the blade that he took from it, or was given to him by his father, the Celestian blade there.
So at this point, Oscan was so much bigger and he's overpowering Domivar, right? So he swung his mighty axe. Domivar parried with his sword, but it's kind of shattered. But little did he know, the sword that was forged, it has embedded in it a very tiny shard of the mirror that killed Elenathora. Basically, there was a tiny fragment left over in her heart that Oscan missed. So this tiny fragment was forged into the sword. So when it broke, this tiny shard lodged itself onto the body of Oscan, and he didn't even realize it in all his pride and arrogance. And what happened next was that his strength began to seep from him. He grew so weak that Domivar just snatched his axe from him, and Domivar did a nosedive towards the ground and slammed the axe into the ground, and that created an entire crack in the ground itself. And when that crack was created, all the wicked ones were sucked into the crack.
Yeah, that's correct. And that ended with Domivar's death, as far as we know, and the shattering of Kalasor's Sorrow. So brought an end to the God War.
That brought an end to the God War. So this is the map immediately after the God War, and you can see the tear is here, and it became to be known as the Abyss itself. And so the 27 wicked ones all reside in the Abyss, in the lower level. So the Abyss actually has 7 levels. They call it the 7th circle. So the bottom circle is where the wicked ones reside, and they're called at the 7th circle. So the sixth circle would be where the archfiends and Morlocks are, and so on and so forth. So the weaker the creatures, the higher level they are. So I'd just like to bring your attention to this map over here. You'll see that there's a lot of land in the middle of this area, which is what we're going to talk about next. And that is the Time of Ice. So the Time of Ice is an event that happens thousands of years after the God War. So actually there's a wicked one that escaped being sucked into the abyss, and this wicked one is actually called Winter itself. She started her stealth subterfuge mission to slowly take over the world. It began by having famines and crops failing, and then it started to become very cold, right? Snow starts setting in. And by that time, the mages, elven mages and human mages sort of starting to figure out what's going on. And when that happened, Winter just revealed herself in full force, and she just started to freeze up the entire world. So it's kind of like the Ice Age. So what happened in that era is there's this great hero called Valendor. Once again, he's the most powerful mortal being alive.
He's actually a shining one, but he just doesn't let it be known at the
Right,
time.
he's a shining one, but he's not not letting it be known to others.
He's Bale's other half, basically. He's shining one half.
He led the fight against Winter, but the war itself lasted 150 years. Winter was pretty smart, so she didn't want to take Valendor head on, so she sent a lot of minions to wage war all around the world. So Valendor was like basically flying left and right, going everywhere to defend the world against Winter's forces. And so Valendor was a little bit frustrated that he couldn't confront Winter. So during one of the battles, he sort of faltered a little bit, and he staggered and he stumbled and went onto one knee. And immediately when that happened, Winter saw her opening and she appeared in front of Valendor. And they sort of fought each other, but Valendor still has a lot of power left in him, and they fought each other, and eventually Valendor actually prevailed. He actually won Winter, but he initially didn't want to kill her off, but when she showed Valendor visions of herself killing off other shining ones, so Valendor dealt the mortal blow. But what he didn't expect that came next was that the moment Winter died, a lot of the ice caps that she has created all around the world started to melt, and that created a great flood in the whole world. And so Valendor is already exhausted and spent at this point. He tried his best, but all he could do was actually to save Terrania Aldar, which is the greatest city of the Elven Kingdom. So he erected this circular wall around the city to prevent it from being flooded over. And then he succumbed to his exhaustion. What also happened during this Time of Ice period was the dwarves. This story is about Odador, the twice crowned. Basically, he was the king of the dwarves at that point of time. At first, the dwarves were here in the southern region, the Abakar region, and they have actually expanded northwards past this great cataract, which is this waterfall over here, and they have also settled in this northern region. So in the Time of Ice, because it was such a big calamity, that the noble races started to band together to fight against Winter, right? The dwarves were deciding whether to answer the call to join the elves and the humans to fight against Winter, because dwarves, they are pretty bitter, and they blamed the events of the Phenolium Mirror on basically human and elves, right? Because dwarves has nothing to do with that, but they fought together nonetheless. So after that, they sealed themselves in. They say, "Screw you guys! I'm not gonna care about you."
Yeah, they weren't wrong. I mean, it was elves and humans. It was kind of their fault.
In the end, the king decided to answer the call for aid, because he decided to honor the old oaths that were created like thousands of years ago. So he mobilized his southern dwarves to say, let's go help the human and the elves. But the northern dwarf says, screw it, they brought this upon themselves, they're going to deal with it, we're not going to help them. So in the end, the king only got half his army, right? He only mobilized the southern dwarves, and basically he was slain during this Time of Ice. And so that made the entire dwarven race without a king. And the southern dwarves hated the northern dwarves. The southern dwarves felt that their king died because he didn't have the full force with the northern dwarves. And the northern dwarves actually, they were attacked as well, and they said that, oh, now we're also half strength at home, so they lost their wars back at home as well, and they blamed the southern dwarves for doing something so foolish as to help a lost cause, basically. And what about The humans, I think, got the worst end of the stick because what happened during when winter passed, right? There was a great flood. The previous map you see, there was no body of water in the middle, but this is the infant sea created with the killing of winter and the melting of the ice caps. The most part of this water is actually the humans' empire, right? The humans occupy a great portion of the infant sea, and it's all now drowned over. Their greatest city at that time was called Primo Janitors, and it's just a shadow of what it's been. It's a city of old ruins, basically. There's still humans living there, but it's a shadow of what it once was. For the humans, there's a new kingdom or hegemony of Basileia that created after the events of the God War. Hegemon Bolivian. He was actually, after the events of the God War, he was surrounded by orcs, and he's at his last stand. He's about to die, and he prayed up to the Celestians or the Shining Ones to help him. And actually, the spirit of Domivar came down and asked him to swear fealty to the Shining Ones, and he did. And so a host of angels or Elohi came down, descended from the skies, and wiped out the entire the orc raiding party that surrounded him. And since then, he has pledged himself to the Shining Ones, right? So the hegemony of Basileia, they are worshipping the Shining Ones. This is the city of Goldenhorn, which is the capital. If you see, it's strategically located along here, along like sea trade routes. So you can see there's two halves of the city. Okay, and you can find this in the 3rd edition rulebook. What happened afterwards was the events of the Destiny of Kings campaign supplement book. This series of events is also known as the Abyssal Crusade or the Quest of the Necromancer. So what actually happened here is that Mortibris, he was on a mission to open the portal of Kuharak. And if he opened this portal, he would have abyssals pouring through the portal. And he was, if you can see the picture over here, like it looks as if he's commanding the abyssals, right? So he sort of brokered the deal with the abyssals. And he's power hungry, basically. So he thought that if he released it and the abyssals would be under his command, that's what he was trying to do. And actually, he enlisted Bale, which is quite a powerful Wicked One, to help him. If you look at the stories of the Wicked One, I think Oscan is the most powerful, and Bale is one of the most powerful as well. It's probably revealed somewhere around this time that Bale happens to be the Wicked One half of Valendor. So what happened afterwards was that there's a tie-in game from Kings of War called Dungeon Saga, which is basically a board game set in the world of Kings of War. The heroes of Dungeon Saga were in the Kings of War world, fighting against the events of this Destiny of Kings, this Mortibris, right? And at the very end, Valendor himself appeared to take on Bale. And because this campaign supplement book it's sort of open, right? When you read the book, it says that the bad guys could win, the good guys could win, and then it says if the good guys win, they stopped Bale and Mortibris. If the bad guys win, Mortibris and Bale wreaked havoc around the world, but in the end, they'll still be stopped. Whichever it is, Bale and Mortibris were stopped, and Valendor, I think, disappeared. Valendor's body is supposedly held in Terrania Ada, which is the Elven city. And that leads up to the event of the Edge of the Abyss. Felix, you want to take over this part?
Yeah, so Edge of the Abyss campaign was a worldwide campaign. What was that, 2017?
2017, yep.
2017, yeah. So worldwide campaign, people, results from all over the world. Players were able to play their games, submitted to this central website, and through this all, these areas listed, because I'm pointing, and you can obviously read what I'm pointing at, were fought over. The Edge of the Abyss region, the Rindu Forest, the Hokban, the Twilight Glades, the Arcavidian Plain, and the Forest of Galahir. Pretty much ended up being a resounding victory for good. In fact, the Twilight Glades were the only section that was wholly lost to the evil side during that campaign. So that'll play in later as we go further along into 3rd edition. But really fun campaign. I participated in a bunch of the games myself. Also, that came out tying into this time frame is the Wing to Sar Publishing. It released a anthology of short stories titled Tales from Mantica, Edge of the Abyss. Kind of talked and kind of not really like game-changing short stories, so you'd be free to read them now anyway. There's nothing really too crazy that has changed with third edition, because a lot of it's very small, intimate stories about, you know, elves or a cursed, you know, a revenant from, you know, Empire Dust or whatever.
I think it's some Brotherhood stuff in there as well. And
Yeah, there's some Brotherhoods. Yeah, whatever they are. Yeah, whoever they are. That all kind of ties up this campaign. So let's get this towards the end of second edition.
I think what happened in the Age of the Abyss as well is that the Abyss has been preparing their invasion of Pannithor, and they have done a ton of rituals, and they came bursting out of the Abyss, because if you catch the fluff here and there, you realize that the Abyss needs some magical powers to be able to leave the Abyss, and to leave it for long or go very far or bring a huge host of army. It needs a lot of magical power.
Right.
So they have been preparing for this event and trying to take over the world, right? Pinky and the Brain style. And of course, the evil races also take advantage of this events happening to try to grab for power as well.
So it was interesting. Of note, the one evil race that did not join the side of evil was in fact the Varangur,
Right.
because as part of them worshiping Korgon, the aforementioned elder god, they do not care for abyssals, at all. So,
Korgon hates the wicked ones, because if you remember the story is that the Celestians came in and stole all of the old god's thunder, so to speak.
Right. So the Varangur, in fact, their battle results actually went towards the side of good. So not every evil army, but there were plenty of evil armies out there in second edition that were able to, you know, try and take advantage of the chaos that, you know, the abyssal spewing force from the abyss wrought. So
Right. So what?
I think to culminate, to bring this to an end, didn't the Green Lady cause a massive flood of the Abyss to dim their power slightly for a time?
So the forces of good were actually led by the Green Lady. In the fluff, the Basilean, they are good guys, but they're basically douchebags as well.
Yeah.
So nobody
I
pretty much liked them, right? But the Green Lady, however, she's like a neutral body, right? And if the evil's too powerful, she's gonna stop them. And so all the armies rallied around and answered Green Lady's call. They fought against the Abyssal Tide. And what happened in the end was that, yes, the Green Lady called upon a great flood. Actually, she enlisted the help of the two Mythicans.
Mythicans from the Trident realm. Yeah.
Which is like the squid-like creatures from the Trident realm. They are very powerful wizards and mages. And so they have this ancient water magic, and they melted the ice from the frozen sea that causes a great gush of water, flooding and flooded the entire abyss, and that stemmed the conquest of the abyss. And it's at great cost, because it wiped out quite a lot of the lands of the ogres, because they just reside south of the frozen sea. And I think the two Mythicans themselves will be killed.
A lot of them died in that ritual.
Yeah, the ritual is so strong that it cost them their lives. And that's what happened at the end of the campaign when it rounded up. And so we lead on to our third edition Kings of War setting right now, which is 10 years after the Age of the Abyss.
Right. Yeah, you got to give time for the Abyss to kind of, you know, get the heaters out, you know, kind of dry up. You know, got to call. Yeah, get all the cleaners and stuff like that. So, you know, 10 years have passed, it's dried out. And so the forces of the Abyss are able to kind of get back to shenanigans again. So, like I said, 10 years later.
And I think in the concluding fluff of the Age of the Abyss, it seems like some ancient being stirred in the Abyss from the flooding. It didn't say who it was. It could be Oscar, or it could be something else, right?
Right, doesn't mention anything.
Time will tell.
Dun, dun, dun.
I see Mark giving a secretive smile. He might know what's going on.
And obviously not 10 years yet to reveal, but, you know.
In this third edition rulebook, we have the map of what we call Pannithor now. It used to be called Mantica, which is this region over here, just immediately north and south of the Infinite Sea. So now it's a greater part of the map.
Right. So in third edition, they pull back the map a little bit more to kind of show more of the area. and so is now Pannithor kind of shows it. And in here we're going to kind of show where sort of the armies in Kings of War sort of fall out. So if you go to the Basileans,
they're residing over here north of the Golden Horn, right?
Yes. So
they're
the ones that, yeah. So they view themselves as the spiritual successors of Primo Janitors. You know, kind of almost think I like to use the historical analog, but think of the the Byzantine Empire kind of after the fall of Rome. You know, may or may not actually have much a relation. You know, but they at least view themselves as we are that ancient civilization. So there's your Basileans, and to their east you're going to have your dwarves.
Yep, they inhabit the Abyssal region, and they are expanding eastwards as well.
Right, and so they're under the rule of King Gallic. He was the one that kind of rallied the dwarves, that fought in the Edge of the Abyss campaign. So he sort of consolidated power after the fighting, and then the Free Dwarves, since they lost the Halpi Mountains as part of the Edge of the Abyss campaign, they've now moved in to the Abyssal region. So now it's a very uneasy, I guess, existence right now as these kind of, I wouldn't say sworn enemies, but there's definitely, they don't like each other a whole lot, and now they're being forced to live together. There's that tension between the Free Dwarves and the regular Imperial Dwarves. So
the Free Dwarves used to inhabit the Halpi Mountains over here, and during the events of the Age of the Abyss, actually the Abyssal Dwarfs actually drove them out of the Halpi Mountains. They crossed the Great Cataract, which is this waterfall over here, and they destroyed the pathway after they left.
Right. That was the win condition, quote unquote, for the dwarves in Edge of the Abyss, was they were able to destroy that cataract before the Abyssal Dwarves were able. Basically, had they lost that region, the Abyssal Dwarves would have kept going and south into the Abyssal region. But since they won, quote unquote, they were able to kind of stop them and kept them contained into the Halpi Mountains.
Right. And the Imperial Dwarves, they're under King Golok, which is his rise to power is not the story is not a noble one. He did a lot of scheming and politicking, consolidating power, coerced the smaller clans, killed off political rivals to become the king he is now. So he's quite imperialist, and he's always trying to expand his empire, right? It's very different from other companies' view of dwarves, where they're basically
just dwarves in general.
Race. But actually, dwarves in Pannithor, they're actually still expanding. And
they are quite imperialist. We call them Imperial Dwarves. There's only imperialist dwarves. So, like I said, that's a big departure from most fantasy intellectual properties. It seems like is actually have an expansionist dwarf empire. So that's kind of a neat difference you get from other game systems or.
Yeah, I'd kind of say the free dwarves would be the kind of traditional dwarves that you might think of from other fantasy genres, and then the Imperial Dwarves, who are the power in this place, really are
You're right.
Have moved away from that, haven't they? They're very much their own thing.
Right. So that's what I always liked because I played what would be Imperial Dwarves now, but I always thought that was kind of neat. That it's just like they're not just a dying rice hiding in the mines, waiting for the world above to end. These guys are actually like. They're consolidating power. They want to expand. They want to, I always thought that was kind of neat.
Right. So next we'll go on to the Elves, and they inhabit this region of the Elven home. You have the Northern Kindred, which are the people at the northern side of things, the Southern Kindred, the Eastern Kindred, and the Western Kindred, also known as the Sea Kindred because they're facing the sea, right?
Right.
And you can see dotted on this map over here, Terrania Adar, which is this coastal city that has the walls to prevent it from being flooded over. Next, we have the Northern Alliance.
The Northern Alliance, also hinted as the Ice Kindred in the...
right, there are some elves there, so they are considered the Ice Kindred.
Telenor's an elven exile, isn't he? So he's kind of got up there, forged the races up there into his own little kingdom.
Right. So it's centered around Chill, which you see right above the word Northern and Northern Alliance. That's the capital city for them. And King Talinar, or Prince Talinar, has found something. They haven't identified yet. I'm sure Mark knows. Is not willing to tell anybody.
I can't. I'm just gonna.
But he
he erected a whole capital around whatever he found, right?
Yeah, so I'm guessing it's probably those E.T. Video games that were destroyed in the 1980s. I'm sure there's been a whole bunch of those.
kind of, we mentioned Vanguard earlier in the Ice and Iron campaign, and that's really why the Abyssal Dwarves marched up towards the Northern Alliance. They were suspicious. They'd heard rumors and they wanted to find out what was going on. So
Right. So, and the thing I love most about the Northern Alliance is it's a very, it's a very heterogeneous sort of army, versus like, you have dwarves. It's a bunch of dwarves, maybe a couple allies here and there. Elves, it's a lot of elves with some allies and stuff like that. The humans, it's a lot of humans, depending on stuff, maybe some allies, maybe some giants or whatever. Whereas Northern Alliance, you've got dwarves, you've got elves, you've got half elves, you've got humans, you've got snow trolls, and it's just like this massive coalition of all these races that are being held together basically by belief in what Prince Talinar is hiding, that he's using this to consolidate power. And I always thought that was just kind of a neat difference from a lot of fantasy at least army tropes, is that this is a very much a mix of a lot of different things. So
we'll get Mantic to give you a commission for every Northern Alliance army sale from now on.
I wish. I still need to start painting some more Northern Alliance, but
right.
I think I have almost 4,000 points of Northern Alliance painted up so far. So.
Amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Next is actually the forces of nature. They inhabit the Green Lady actually inhabit this area called the Forest of Galar here, probably the biggest forest on this map. Right now.
And that was the one that I believe the Goblins had invaded during the Edge of the Abyss campaign. They were going after the wood. The trees of Galahir were apparently just noted for their strength and stuff like that, and I can't remember the name of the goblin guy, but anyways, he was going after the woods there to help build a lot of his crazy war engines and stuff like that the goblins were using. So they mainly went into that one.
Right. And so there's a lot of races that's in here as well. There's the Sylvankin, basically the tree-hugging elves that also reside in the Forest of Galar. And the herd, they are very akin to nature, so they're also there. And the Order of the Green Lady, which is the
tree-hugging humans
of Brotherhood, they have pledged their service to the Green Lady, so they are also go wherever the Green Lady bids them to be. So they are stationed from the Forest of Galar here.
Yeah.
Next, we have the Ogres. The Ogres actually reside along these mammoth steppes. But the story of the Ogres is they are very mercenary-like race, and it's like their rites of passage is when they go into adulthood, they would go into a mercenary lifestyle and see the world, right? And when they retire, they'll come back with all their riches and tales of what they've accomplished throughout their lives. So that's their homeland.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think during the Edge of the Abyss, they relocated to successor kingdoms for a bit, and then, when the flood happened.
Yeah. So the successor kingdoms will be over this region. And actually, it's the
Arcavidian Plain. Yeah. They were hired to help guard the wall as they're building it. They're building a wall to kind of protect the successor kingdoms.
Right. They have drifted back.
So next on, we have the Trident realm of Narratica. So in the Fluff, there's in the background story, they actually have 3 major kingdoms, but I only managed to glean the location of one of them. It's only said that one of them is in the Endless Sea, which is this sea to the west side over here. And where the other 2 kingdoms are, I'm not sure, but obviously they can access the Infant Sea over here because they're all connected, right?
We have kind of pinned them down in the RPG if you want me to.
Ooh. I mean, is it okay for you to review the information?
Secrets being revealed tonight.
Yeah, sure. It's approved content by Mantic, and it will be in the RPG book. So yeah, they're happy to.
Right.
So you've got the 3 kingdoms. You've got this is actually written by Ben Stoddard as well, who's the
Drowned Secrets author.
Drowned Secrets. So yeah, I thought it was great to get Ben involved, and they're included in his book as well. So you've got the jeweled city of Ithmedu. In the great kingdom of Medu Sith, which spans the equator of Pannithor, basically. Far to the north, encircling the frozen seas that border Chir and the snow-capped mountainous regions, lies the kingdom of Mirahim.
Right.
So it's somewhere near the Northern Alliance side.
And that's where the ice naiads would come from.
Yeah. So. And then lastly, there is the beautiful but remote kingdom of Illithish, often referred to as the kingdom of naiads. It doesn't really say where that is, but it's far away.
And it's probably underwater, so
Yeah.
It's underwater
So
somewhere.
3 kingdoms. There you go.
Yeah.
Some exclusive content.
There we go.
there you go.
Next, let's talk about the Abyssal Dwarfs. So the Abyssal Dwarfs inhabit the ground level around the Abyss, and the Abyss is actually in the Saga region. And so they inhabit the grounds and the undergrounds around that region. And of course, after the events of the Age of the Abyss, they actually conquered downwards and drove the free dwarfs out of the Halpi mountains. So they control that part as well. And of course, the Abyss reside inside the crack itself, the Abyss, and sometimes they come pouring out. As for the Orcs, they were created by wicked ones, right? They were created by Kaken, the Black One of the wicked ones, to do their bidding. So they, of course, originate from this area as well. But according to their background story, they're actually everywhere by now. They've spread everywhere by now. Yep, this is the Abyssal Dwarfs conquering downwards, taking over the Halpi Mountains. And the story of the Ratkin is they're created by one Abyssal Dwarf who's experimenting with creating servant creatures, right? So the Ratkin are actually created by the Abyssal Dwarfs, and some of them broke free, and they are forging a life and destiny of their own right now. So we have the Empire of Dust. It's actually quite far down over here. It's actually probably lower than this part. It's below the cracked lands, but because this is the zoomed in version of the map, so I'll just put it over here. Next up, we have the Undead, and it wasn't said explicitly where they are. And I think the Undead, they are not really they are a faction, but they're not an empire per se, right? They are necromancers that power hungry, want to forge their own destinies. And so
yeah, I mean the Ophidians are kind of dabble into all sorts of weird stuff, and the main dabbling is necromancy. You've got the God Kings down there that rule the cities, and they summon djinn and demons and mainly necromantic arts as well. So
right. So the Ophidians, they are humans, and basically the very brief background is that they were together with the Empire of Dust in the past. There's the Amun people. They dabbled a lot in necromancy, and then the Amun people became a little bit too greedy with necromancy, and the Ophidians left them. So they settled eastwards, and then they summoned a great storm to kill off the entire Amun civilization. And so they were all buried in sand. And then after that, their ancient magics were awoken, and they came out as the Empire of Dust. So Ophidians themselves, they still practice necromancy, but they have far more respect for it, so to speak. They are not using it to take over the world. They are using it more for servitude purpose. Also, I don't know how noble that is. So we're gonna move on. The Brotherhood. So the Brotherhood, before the flooding of the Infant Sea, right? Before there's a body of water over here. The kingdom is somewhere here, and it's now called, whatever's left of the kingdom is the Forsaken Isles over here. I think they were up north fighting winter along with Valendor when the flooding happened. So instead of coming back to the Forsaken Isles, they actually settled south of the Abyss. Not a great geographical location to be, but they have pledged themselves to defend the world against the abyssal threat, and they are guarding the border of the Abyss. And with the events of the Age of the Abyss, the crack got wider and it destroyed their city.
Right, destroyed a lot of the Brotherhood's homeland.
Yeah, and there was a lot of panic back in the day that Mantic might be killing off the entire Brotherhood faction. So what happened in third
Instead,
edition?
they give them 2. It's amazing. So, honestly, it's funny. A lot of the reason Edge of the Abyss went to good is because if you look at the campaign results, there's a lot of Brotherhood players submitting their results, and a lot of Brotherhood armies, kicking a lot of butt during that campaign. So
they're like, don't destroy our army, please.
Please save us. So what we have now is you've got the Order of the Green Lady, which are the parts of the Brotherhood that pledge themselves in service of the Green Lady. And then you have the Order of the Brother Mark. The Basileans are just like, hey, y'all, you want to stay where you're at? We'll give you all your we'll give you horses and equipment, but just stay there. We need a buffer state just in case forces of the Abyss decide to do shenanigans and hootenanny again. So So that's where the brother. That's why the brother marker is still basically where the Brotherhood had been prior to the Edge of the Abyss campaign. So.
Yep, they're rebuilding their cities just south of the Abyss, and if you can see geographically, that's a buffer in between the Abyss and Basileia. So Basileia would love for the brother mark to stay there. So then
just where the hegemony wants them. Ah, perfection.
So next we have the Free Dwarfs, which
Right.
was
we
revealed
previously
earlier
mentioned
that
are kind of there with their uneasy coexistence with the dwarves.
so they fled southwards to be inhabiting North Abakar. King Golok kind of gave them some real estate. So next we have the Salamander Armies. They have they're actually a seafaring race. So they're lizards. They like fire. They like water as well. So what do you know? They have inhabited these 3 islands over here known as the 3 Kings. So it's in the middle of the infancy. And we have the Kingdoms of Men. So they are inhabiting this western region over here. They have the Successor Kingdoms region. This the old Primo Janitors region. So they are still humans over there. And there's the young, is it called the Young Kingdoms over here?
Yeah.
The Young Kingdoms, which is the Akdovician Plain. And the League of Rhodia is actually in the Akdovician Plain, and the city is
Arcadia. Yeah.
You can see it on the map over here. So that city is over here. Okay, so that's where the League of Rhodia resides.
And where the halflings live.
Right, and where the halflings are. The Shires are over there. And the Twilight Kin, they are inhabiting this mouth of Leaf. So it's at the edge of this body of water that ends on land over here. And there's a lot of deep and mysterious caverns in the area, which is where they hide their kingdom in. The Varangur, they are also Northmen, and they inhabit the areas north of the Frozen Sea. So this is the Frozen Sea that the Green Lady and the 2 Manticans sort of melted to flood the Abyss, right?
Right. And also, just also remember, like, the Varangur worship Korrigan, who is up in the, if you think windy tundras and stuff like that. So those are the Northmen who worship Korrigan. So, and also of note with the League of Rhodia in 3rd edition, if you read into the fluff, it seems like the halflings are leaving their membership in the league. For a not so well kept secret, Mantic will probably be doing a halfling only army in the near future. But just so you know, the halflings are leaving the league. They're no longer a lot of. I think it seemed like the kind of the, I don't know if you guys read this out of idea with the 3rd edition lore, was a lot of xenophobia amongst the human kingdoms, and so the halflings seem to be not about that life, and so decided to leave the league for
right.
reasons.
So in the army list itself, you can see there's less halfling selections if you compare it to their 2nd edition list.
Right.
But you see a lot of mentions come into like League of Infamy and things with the halflings as well. So I'm sure that will
right, with League of Infamy coming up with new ones. It's not like halflings are disappearing from the world. They're actually coming more. But I would imagine there would probably be a halfling specific theme list.
Yeah. Awesome. Lastly, I think the only one we didn't cover are the goblins, and basically the goblins are everywhere. So they are scattered all around, and they are like in small tribes because they can never become very big because they're not powerful or organized enough to do that. And
right.
the
closest
origins
they
of the
got
goblins itself is not very clear.
Yeah, the closest they got to having a person unite them was during the Edge of the Abyss campaign. If I was a better YouTube podcast host, I would have looked the guy's name up by now. But yeah, so he came the closest to actually uniting all the goblins. He kind of fancies himself to be, the king of the goblins, and his defeat definitely dealt a blow to that ego. So, but yeah, goblins tend to be in small, disorganized tribes. They tend to live underground, so it's one of those. We're never quite sure where the goblins are because they're always, moving around. So,
right. So if I can rewind, we can roughly mark out the areas of the 6 areas that were fought over in the Age of the Abyss. So I think we have the Twilight Glades, which is over here. So it's a forest region in the middle of Elven Home, the Elven's the Elven Kingdom. This was lost in a campaign. So what actually happened here was that the Night Stalkers, there's a rip in the reality and the Night Stalkers come pouring through. Night Stalkers can appear from anywhere that there's a rip in reality. But the biggest rip right now we have is within the Twilight Glades itself. The Hawkman is over here. It's actually this mouth over here. The Empire of Dust were creating a fleet to cross the Infancy to conquer upwards. And the Trident Realm stopped them. We have the Octovikian Plain, which is over here. We have the Forest of Garlia here. We have Tragar, or rather the Edge of the Abyss, which is over here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rin Duferis is this this last hold at the edge of the Halpi Mountains where the Free Dwarves were trying to defend and they weren't able to do it, so they escaped to pass the Great Cataract. So that's the 6 areas that were being fought over in the Edge of the Abyss campaign. So fast forward, I think we missed out the Night Stalkers just now.
Yeah, I think we were talking.
Did
yeah,
we
it's over here actually. Yeah.
Did we miss them though?
And now we're gonna talk about Halpi's Rift. We would like to get people to know more about Halpi's Rift so that they know what they're going into when they enter the campaign. So Felix, you have read out fresh in your mind what happened in Halpi's Rift. So share with us.
Right. So as tying in with the Ice and Iron campaign, as the Abyssal Dwarves were kind of besieging Chill and trying to get to whatever, the KFC chicken recipe, whatever that Prince Salinar is hiding. Dravak Dalkin, who was a special character from the Edge of the Abyss campaign, a Abyssal Dwarf Iron caster crazy, who has a split personality or split soul with an obsidian golem. He remains back in Halpi's mountain area, and he is digging, trying to find something else. So he's sacrificing hundreds of, almost thousands of Ratkin slaves and other, Abyssal Dwarves trying to find something. And then he ends up discovering this magical confluence of all these planes called the Nexus. And this massive, I guess, eruption of power happens, and all magic users in Pannithor sense it. And even Prince Talinar can see it from his distance. So if you look at the map, Northern Alliance is way far away from the Halpi Mountain. So being able to see that go on is quite a significant magical event. And so
a magical blast goes up into the heaven, so you can see a stream of magical light going
right.
into the
And
sky.
so Prince Talinar sees the Abyssal Dwarves starting to retreat because they're being called back to protect this nexus that Dravak Dalkin has found, as Dravak Dalkin's trying to consolidate power amongst the Abyssal Dwarves. But then all these other magic users all feel it and notice, holy crap, this is a powerful confluence of all these magical planes of existence and all these different types of magic. We need to go there. And so all these different, so this Halpi's Rifts campaign is basically all the magic users of the world bringing up these armies to go fight and try and take control.
Figure out what's going on in the Halpi's, in this Halpi's
mountain region.
So.
Yeah. So, and then the Free Dwarves are kind of trying to take advantage of this. Hey, while everyone's distracted, let's sneak back in, because I know a lot of what Dravak Dalkin was trying to do was trying to stamp out and consolidate his power, trying to kill those last enclaves of free dwarves that were kind of hiding within the mountains, because that's what dwarves do. They dig deeper into the mountain to protect themselves. And so Dravak Dalkin, his Abyssal Dwarves, are trying to root them all out. As the Ratkin and Goblins have been fighting in that area, the Abyssal Dwarf Ratkin realize that, wait a minute, we're free? We had that option? So a lot of them started to leave Dravak Dalkin. And so the Ratkin forces have been swelling within the Halpi's mountain area, and so it's just gonna be a good old Donnybrook, I think, is what they say in my mom's hometown. So it's just gonna be a good grand old time as all these armies try to come in and kill each other over a nexus. So
right. So what the Abyssal Dwarves didn't expect of the Ratkin is that because they're rats, right? They thrive in adversity, they thrive in harsh conditions, and they multiply really, really fast. So they were able to, even under slavery, they were still able to thrive as a race, and eventually they some of them rather broke free of their bonds. So if you look at the Kings of War army lists, they have the Redkin and the Redkin slaves, which are the slaves that's still under the control of the Abyssal Dwarfs. And the Abyssal Dwarfs use a lot of slaves because after they turn evil, they cannot procreate anymore. And so the only way they increase in dwarven numbers is when there are more dwarves that fall to the dark side of the force, basically. And so they have to use a lot of slaves because they are dwarves, Abyssal Dwarfs themselves, they are limited in number.
When they go move north, given to their greed, they move north and become Abyssal, and they kind of get soaked, they seep in that fell energy of the Abyss, don't they? That kind of soaks into them. And
yeah, their origin story is where they expanded northwards. Some of the dwarves were too greedy and they ventured too close to the Abyss and they were corrupted by the Abyss powers, and that's how they're formed. In the Halpi's Rift campaign, you'll be playing in different planes of reality. And so where are these planes of reality? You can actually find it in this part of the rulebook. Is the page about magic, and it's on page 99 of your main rulebook. And I have a zoomed in portion of the planes of reality, which is over here. Let me push this aside. And so the first plane where we all are, or rather they all are, is the material plane.
Speak for yourself.
And the Abyssals reside in the Abyssal plane, right? The Imperial plane is sort of the holy plane, right? And the Night Stalkers, they come from the ethereal plane, the etheric plane. On the outside of it all is the astral plane. So this is like time and space kind of thing. And you can see the symbol of the sun and the moon here. So in the Halpi's Rift campaign, you'll be playing in these 5 planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is just a quick look at this center part of the page, which is actually the different schools of magic. So it's just for your fluff and entertainment purpose. So lastly, we're going to talk about the books that are already out or coming out. And that is the Steps to Deliverance, Drowned Secrets, and Pious. And Steps to Deliverance and Drowned Secrets are already out. They are full-length novels, and Steps to Deliverance has the audiobook version as well, which was how I consumed that book, right? The Pious book says Tales of Pannithor instead of Mantica.
Right. They're working on trying to change over all the. Obviously, you print so many books, and obviously once they're printed, you can't change the name. But they're now going to be called Tales of Pannithor from basically here on out.
I always found the name Mantica all right. If the company wasn't called Mantic, would you be all right with the region being called Mantica?
Yeah, that's always been a kind of a divisive thing in the community. I've never really cared, but
So I think in the horizon there are dwarf books coming out as well. So people who love dwarfs, you'll be looking forward to the Dwarven Novels.
Right. Well, there's at least one, right? Because I know Mike Rossi has talked about it on Plugged Radio.
Yes,
he's writing
Mike Rossi is writing one, and Ben Stoddard is writing the other one. And in Ben Stoddard's Dwarven novel, it will feature a lot of the Dwarven living legends.
Right.
So that's, I think, probably the first time the living legends in the games are being used in the novels. And Pious is a seafaring novel because Kings of War has dropped, Mantic has dropped this bombshell upon the world, which is they're coming out with a naval game called Kings of War Armada. And currently the starter set is about to be released, and we have the Basileans and the Orc fleets with the Dwarven and Empire of Dust fleets following up closely in early of next year. And I'm pretty stoked about this. What about you guys?
Probably they won't kill me if I release this, but I was in the playtest group late into the development of the game, so it's going to be a super solid game. I'm not a huge naval person. I always tell people I joined the army for a reason. Navy stuff, but it is definitely a solid rule set. It's based off of the Black Seas. Is Black Seas? One's a TV show, that one's a game. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a super solid rule set. So it's definitely, if you are into like naval combat and fleet based combat, it's going to scratch that itch. It's going to have that, it values positioning, being able to run the, cross the T, like the famous Admiral Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. Like, you can actually do a lot of damage to enemy fleets if you're able to maneuver that. But I think it's just going to have enough of that that fantasy, that Kings of War element to it to kind of keep people interested. And there's definitely going to be, it's going to be a fun game. I will give you that.
Awesome, looking forward to it. So in terms of Kings of War, the games that's in this Kings of War universe or the world of Pannithor would be, of course, Kings of War. We have Armada, which is the naval game, which we also have Kings of War Vanguard, which Mark Langworthy is on the rules committee of. That is a skirmish game of Kings of War, where you play with a squad of about maybe 10 guys. And then there is Dungeon Saga. That is actually a board game where basically one guy controls all the bad guys, and the other players control one hero each. It's a dungeon crawling board game. And in the near future, we also have League of Infamy, which is another board game where actually you play as the bad guys. So that's
misunderstood.
Right.
They're just drawn that way.
So. These are the games in the Kings of War universe, and that brings us to the end of this summary of the Kings of War Fluff. Thank you very much, Mark and Felix, for joining me on this video. And I hope that this would tickle some people's interest in the lore of Kings of War. Whether it's like, it's good to know that, or maybe you go like, oh, I think I want to read up on more of this stuff. Where can you find all this? I think the 3rd edition rulebook has quite a big part of most of this information.
There's a ton of information in the 3rd edition. The hardcover one.
Yeah.
Now that they're selling the Gamers Edition separately, don't buy the Gamers Edition, then complain about the lack of fluff. It's in the, because this is the hardback one. You can murder small animal with this thing. So, not that I recommend it. From a legal perspective, I don't get Paige in trouble, but you could.
Yeah. So in preparing for this video, I've read the 2nd edition rulebook as well. All the fluff that's in the 2nd edition rulebook, it's in the 3rd edition rulebook, and it's actually further expanded upon. All the history and stories were given a greater detail in the 3rd edition rulebook. Just some of the things that's a little bit more summarized would be the fluff from the Age of the Abyss. You have to find it in the Age of the Abyss campaign books, and the Clash of Kings supplement that concludes the campaign has the endings conclusion fluff. Signing off, this is Paige from Newbie Dice, and
ciao.
Good night.